Hello, this is Group 1's PowerPoint presentation against no-kill shelters by Jessica Fernandez, Jasmine Calixto, Miriam Lopez, and Jane Lavandera from the class Animals and Society. Background on no-kill shelters. It started more than half a century ago when independent caregivers began rescuing and sheltering homeless animals to keep them alive. This was in response to standard operating procedure at the time of most humane societies and tax-supported animal control services that simply killed stray and abandoned animals. Typically, they were not communicative with each other, and they weren't popular with the animal welfare establishment. During the same time, an effort to reduce the overpopulation of cats and dogs using spay and neuter programs fortunately arose. With both movements having a common goal of ethically reducing the overpopulation of stray and abandoned animals, they merged to form the no-kill movement. By the 1990s, the movement was gaining support. Even then, animals were still being euthanized rather than being saved. Independent caregivers in a few humane societies led the charge, while national agencies were still focusing on improving their euthanasia techniques. It was a tough movement, unfortunately, especially since they didn't network with each other.
What is a no-kill animal shelter? A no-kill animal shelter is a shelter or rescue that fights to keep animals from being humanely put to sleep by finding them permanent homes. People were led to believe no-kill animal shelters put down animals due to overcrowding, which is still an issue shelters all over the nation suffer with today. No-kill animal shelters do not euthanize animals that are friendly, healthy, or are sick and injured animals that can be easily treated with vet care, but instead the animals that are suffering or aggressive. However, due to recent trends, sometimes euthanization for specific dogs doesn't happen for the sake of high live release rates, which include aggressive or bite dogs.
Some common misconceptions that come with euthanization shelters. One of the common misconceptions that I've been hearing or been seeing a lot when reading articles has been when people think of shelters, they automatically think of an inhumane, cold, cynical place, a place where the animals are sad and suffering and they're just being treated almost as prisoners when that is not the case at all. Um, as well as them thinking that um, they do not want to save the animals when that is not the case at all. Many shelters try to keep their save rate above 90%. They try their best to help the animal, they try their best to help them live comfortably. They're actually a lot like normal animal shelters. A lot of animal, like traditional shelters that people think of, are actually uh, euthanization shelters that just keep their save rate above, a little bit above or under 90%. That being said, that these workers do want to help these animals, they do want to save them, but unfortunately they take a look and they have to accept a harsh reality that these animals, or a lot of these animals, or some of these animals, sorry, unfortunately cannot be saved. They cannot um, be treated with the same resources as like for example, a healthy animal would, or whatever the case may be. But the shelters aren't realistic. They're not inhumane. They're not cold. They're not this cynical kind of place where it's just the animals are not being taken care of. They are. They just unfortunately cannot be all taken care of. Another common misconception is that the people working at these centers want to euthanize these animals. Again, not the case. I've been seeing a lot of articles saying that these people do not care for the animals, they do not like the animals, when that is not true. Many of these workers actually have a deep caring and love for these animals, but they also see it as the most humane, most most humane way to take care of the animal, to euthanize them, and it's just a way of taking care of unwanted animals. A lot of these workers feel sad, but they know that it's sometimes the only option reality that they really have. So,
Chronic overcrowding. All shelters face overcrowding and struggle with finding space for animals every day. By constructing smaller kennels for animals to accommodate a larger quantity of kennels for more animals, which is common for larger shelters. The quality of care that animals receive is significantly reduced. The limited space available to animals often contributes to high levels of stress that can cause abnormal behavior such as increased vocalization, such as barking, pacing in kennels, loss of appetite, fear, aggression, hiding or shutting down behavior, extreme shedding, and etc. Continuous high levels of stress often contributes to illness or disease. By being confined to close quarters with a large quantity of animals can lead to the spread of contagious diseases such as ringworm and giardia. This also means that the amount of medical treatment or individual care an animal receives This also means that the amount of medical treatment or individual care an animal receives will be reduced from limited resources and staffing, which can delay treatment to non-emergency related concerns. To elaborate, a lot of the staffs will be busy taking care of other animals, and they might oversee an illness or an infection going on in certain animals because of the overcrowding and the limited space. They might ignore some signs and symptoms, mistaking it as just behavioral issues.
Functionality of no-kill animal shelters. No-kill animal shelters are guided by specific policies and regulations to stay no-kill animal shelters. There are also a set of fundamental principles that most animal shelters follow as stated from Barks Parks Foundation. Principles that Barks Parks Foundation advocates for and advises that more shelter use are commitment to life, medical and behavioral rehabilitation, adoption and placement programs, community engagement, and euthanasia as a very last resort. This can be misleading because all shelters struggle with overcrowding, which also affects intake. This then results in shelters heavily relying on placement programs like rescue transfers or fostering if adoptions isn't possible.
Other consequences of no-kill shelters. A financial toll on shelter budget due to substantial requirement of the following resources: food and water, medical care, staffing, maintenance. Donations may be inconsistent, increased pressure to adopt quickly rather than taking time to find compatible families, emotional toll on staff and volunteers that face realities of neglect, abandonment, and inability to save every animal. Not at all Not all will receive quality care as there is limited space.
Cultural and sociological importance of euthanasia. Cultural perspectives vary depending on religion, though many see it as a compassionate way to end the prolonged suffering of an animal if needed. Their role sociologically is a response to the complex intersection of perceived sentience, on autonomy, societal values, and legal frameworks that govern life or death. In other words, euthanasia gives an animal a painless death in their sleep instead of suffering for a prolonged period from illness or injury.
Admission and intake limitations. With a lack of space comes limited intake. Everyday animals are born on the street. They either become surrenders or dumped due to lack of space. For shelters to maintain their status of no-kill, that also means denying intake of new animals if their current animals aren't being placed. Since most shelters are overcrowded, they can't take in more animals that are living on the streets, which forces them to wander the streets longer for food, water, and shelter from the elements. This also denies them medical care if it's necessary. Limited kennels also means families with animals they'd like to surrender will also get denied, ultimately resulting in that animal possibly getting discarded somewhere to fend for themselves. Larger no-kill shelters experiencing overcrowding might also make deliberate selections to turn down animals who are being surrendered to uphold their status by picking only animals that might be easier to adopt, will be a higher priority on that list, healthy dogs, or dogs with outstanding health issues, younger dogs, puppies, or even more desirable dogs, or expensive dogs. A good example of such would be golden retrievers, Labrador retrievers, German shepherds, or even cocker spaniels. Another good example are Frenchies, which are more expensive dogs that are high on the market. Prolonged stay. Some animals might get adopted faster than others, while some could reside in the shelter for months or even years, due to behavioral issues, commonly with other animals, other people, resources, or barrier aggression, being undesirable or a breed someone might not want to adopt. Common breeds are bully breeds such as pit bulls, boxers, mastiffs, or cane corsos, or high energy breeds, namely huskies or malinois. Animals that stay in shelters for an extended period of time eventually start to decline and suffer from physical and mental deterioration from living in a high stress environment. They experience stress, anxiety, or depression, fear of or aggression towards other animals, humans, or new situations that they're being put in, overattachment or separation anxiety from staff or volunteers, or pets that they might have bonded with, altered eating habits and abnormal weight change, and more. Prolonged residency could be determined as more cruel than humane euthanasia if their quality of life is worse than death. Dangerous and vicious animals. It is common for no-kill shelters to house animals of all breeds and temperaments. This includes animals that may display an assortment of aggressive behaviors. These behaviors fall into a key category that they can exhibit, such as fear-based, resource guarding, leash reactivity, territorial, pain-induced, predatory, social conflict, and idiopathic rage. Due to the increase in rehabilitation centers and animal trainers that focus on aggressive behavior, more shelters are avoiding euthanizing aggressive animals or even animals that have a known bite history. Since rehabilitation programs are now offered, shelters keep vicious animals and even try to adopt them out to families to increase their live release rate. Adopting out aggressive animals instead of euthanizing them could put the public in danger by allowing it to enter society. If the animal remains aggressive, it could potentially cause significant injury or death to other animals or people. A public incident involving an aggressive animal can not only result in injury or death, but also decreases the level of support being received from the community that trusted they were adopting safe animals. Lack of resources. The number of dogs no-kill shelters intakes exceeds the number of resources needed to care for each and every one of those animals that stays in the shelter from the avoidance of euthanasia. Most shelters function solely from their city's budget, which is taxpayer money or earnings acquired from their nonprofit efforts. Housing animals in every available kennel will result in more rapid use of their shelter's budget as materials continue to get more expensive, which is to be used for medical care and supplies, quality food, enrichment programs, blankets and beds, facility maintenance, and many more. Operating at max capacity could delay any treatments animals receive, putting their lives in danger. Compromising their safety and increasing risk to that animal's well-being contributes to a serious animal welfare concern. This also implies that the number of animals is too great to give each one the same level of care and time. Too many dogs can mean overworked employees and overwhelmed volunteers that entices them to leave than it does to support that shelter or rescue.
Current events against no-kill shelters. A lawsuit has recently been filed against the Apple Valley Animal Shelter in the town of Apple Valley in California on October 31st of 2025. They are accused of severe mismanagement and systematic cruelty of animals at the Apple Valley Animal Shelter. This was due to a poor budget and a low interest in saving the lives of animals. This truly showcases the financial strain on no-kill shelters face and how it can affect animals and staff.
Euthanization shelters can provide more than no-kill centers. So as we know, many animals that are out on the streets, there are a lot of animals who are often mistreated, abused, and or killed by not just owners, but out on the streets by drivers. Um, Euthanization is the most humane way of putting those animals down and helping those animals who have suffered enough and cannot be helped in shelters, that cannot be helped mentally, something that's gone wrong. Um, as well as another solution may be that they hold up a realistic viewpoint that we unfortunately cannot save all of the animals. And as sad as this sounds, it's the hard reality that we have to accept. There are a lot of factors that play into traditional shelters that, as we have seen time and time again and we have talked about throughout these slides, that they are just unrealistic to keep up, such as the overcrowding of animals in shelters. Unfortunately, realistically, thinking about it, if the shelter is overcrowded, the resources are going to be very scarce for these animals, as well as having those animals that unfortunately cannot be helped, aggressive animals, reactive animals. I think it's very hard for a shelter that is already understaffed, underfunded, and not properly trained to take care of these animals that are need a little bit more professional help. Which leads me back to my third point, that it allows us, these euthanization shelters allow us to focus on the animals that can be saved, and allows for more room and resources for these animals. Like I've been mentioning, unfortunately, we cannot save all of the animals that are in the shelters. Unfortunately, we cannot save and foster all the animals that are out on the streets. But with the euthanization shelters, in the most humane way possible, it puts down those animals that unfortunately you cannot help or we cannot help, and allows for more resources for the animals that can be helped. It also helps with overcrowding, helps with the staff being able to help those animals, because nobody wants to see all of those animals suffering. And a lot of these animals that are in the shelters are in the shelters their entire life, where they do not get fostered, they do not get adopted, and unfortunately that's a very sad case. But many of them also have a lot of health issues that many people don't have the training to do or to help, And these euthanization shelters kind of help filter those animals out and provide a space where healthier animals that can be given resources and helps have a better chance of being adopted and be put out back into the world. As well as by using these solutions, we can correct the common misconceptions that come with euthanization shelters. Although it may seem cold and cynical to some people, other people may see it as a way to actually help the animals that are in need, to help the animals out on the streets, to help the animals that are already in the shelters and have been in the shelters their entire lives, and it allows more resources to come to those shelters for the staff, for the animals, for resources that can be given to these shelters. Yes.
No-kill practices aren't effective. In How the No-Kill Movement Portrays Its Name, Jonathan Franzen goes on about how the TNR Trap, Neuter, Return program took cats, simply spayed and neutered them, and dumped them back on the street where they were found. While this is still an effort to prevent overpopulation of stray cats, the process still leaves cats on the street where they could affect the ecosystem or be harmed. Even then, the TNR program has shown to not be effective for keeping stray cat populations down, as cats simply reproduce so quickly, and there are so many of them. The TNR promised to reduce the number of street cats, yet still dump cats on the street anyway.
Lastly, I want to give an overview of ethical issues that come with no-kill shelters and euthanization shelters. One of them being is that no-kill shelters are overcrowded, as we have mentioned many times before in this presentation. They are severely overcrowded, which not only stresses out the animals but stresses out the staff as well. A lot of animals get very depressed, anxious, they get anxiety being in these shelters, being so overcrowded, not being able to get the mental stimulation that they may need, or the social contact that they may need, as well just plain like attention. It's think about it almost being in like a prison cell for humans. That's kind of how it is for animals. Being in these no-kill shelters that are overcrowded can often lead to also heightened aggression as well as spread of disease. Um, when a new animal comes into the shelter, what happens is that they don't know what the animal may have. And if one dog is sick and they're in the vicinity of other dogs, those dogs are going to get sick, and it can just spread an outbreak that goes on to my next point, which questions the quality of life that these animals are living in. Their quality of life actually decreases being in those shelters because, like I said, they're depressed, they're anxious, they're ridden with anxiety of just being in such a closed, confined space with no real mental stimulation, because the staff is so overworked trying to take care of all these other animals that unfortunately is just not realistic to do with the others. But pet euthanization is a more humane way to put an animal to rest rather than for them to die of disease or overcrowding or depression. It's a way of just being more humane with them and giving, like I've been saying, those resources to other animals that are in need, that may have a better chance of living than having 80 dogs in a shelter and not being able to take care of every single one because it's overcrowded. And as much as people may want to think that that helps animal, unfortunately we have shown that it does not. It just leads to more mental issues for these animals, unfortunately. And then no euthanization means that there's no way to put down a dog there's no way to put down a dog painlessly when the time comes. And this is for animals that are severely aggressive or who are severely sick in any type of way or form, where they are just not living their life happily. They're living it in a very hard, um, in a very hard and miserable way. Um, Having these no-kill shelters leaves these animals to suffer or to be in danger by catching a disease, perhaps, or being more depressed, perhaps. There's a lot of things that can factor into these things that most people do not want to think about, because it's just the harsh reality that we unfortunately have to live.
Regulations of transfers in no-kill shelters. So there are many regulations of transfers in no-kill shelters, but there are many that are really poorly regulated. So here we are going to discuss 4 effects. Starting off with lack of standardized definition and oversight. Shelters may manipulate statistics to appear no kill by simply excluding certain animals from their reported save rates, such as those deemed unadoptable due to age, illness, or other factors. Regulations for transfers are often vague, and discretion can cut both ways, meaning shelters have broad power that can be used poorly without detailed policies. Moving on to poorly monitored transfers and partner organizations. Animals may be transferred to other shelters, some of which may actually be kill shelters where the animals are likely to be euthanized. Transfers can also be sent to rescue organizations that are not adequately equipped to handle them, leading to neglect or poor conditions. Shelters have difficulty inspecting and supervising all the rescue and foster placements, making it hard to track the animals' well-being after they have left. Now, the negative impact on animals. Transferring animals can cause significant stress from new environments, which can make them appear depressed and negatively impact their chances of being adopted. New staff or volunteers at receiving shelters may not have the animal's full history, potentially creating further challenges for the animal. There are concerns that the same transfers include sick and injured animals that may not receive aid for up to 12 hours during transport, which can cause a lot of damage to these animals. Moving on to underlying pressure. The pressure to meet no kill live release rates benchmark, which are often tied to funding and public perception, can create an incentive to transfer animals out rather than address root causes. Some argue that resources should be focused on improving local adoption rates and online descriptions rather than moving the animals. And now, to conclude this presentation, we hope that by the end of the presentation, you understand that though they mean well, no-kill shelters do more harm than good. No-kill shelters lead to overcrowding, which can spiral towards the spread of disease, cruel treatment of animals, intentional or not, financial strain on the shelter, and staff and volunteer burnout. They have also been shown as ineffective via the TNR. So overall, no-kill shelters either need to develop better measures against overpopulation of animals in a human way, or stop being no-kill altogether. Thank you for your time. To finish off, this is our reference page.